family. When you talk about famous families, you think about like the Roosevelts, you think
Kennedys.
about, the Kennedys. Yeah, huge family name. Well, one such family that we all know about was the Vanderbilts. What makes the Vanderbilts particularly interesting in the family that we want to focus on in this one is that in 1877, Cornelius Vanderbilt passed away and left his $100 million fortune to his oldest son. Now, for reference, that's the equivalent of $200 billion in today's money. Like, just think about that. $200 billion would make Jeff Bezos and his rockets look poor. So just think about how much money that is. How long do you think it took him to squander it, G? Don't answer that because we talked about this beforehand. 50. Also, just for reference for how big this was, it was equivalent. What he handed down to his son was equivalent to 50% of the holdings of the U.S. Treasury. So imagine somebody had half the wealth that the U.S. does. That's how much we're talking about they handed down. It's just a stupid amount. And obviously a lot's changed, so it's not a one-to-one trade. So for any of you nerds that want to criticize me about that, just keep it to yourself.
There's multiple ways to calculate inflation dollars. So.
Thank you. And if you come at us, I'll let Garrett talk to you because he loves talking about math. But 50 years, man. Think about that. 50 years. That's like 2 generations. Which means by the time that his great-grandson was born, he had nothing being handed down to him.
And that he never reproduced himself into his children, right? Because if he had reproduced himself into his children, then they would have done the same thing that he did. They would have been able to take all that money and turn it into more, and turn resource into more resource, and create more value. But they did the opposite. Like, he was a sower and his children were eaters. Yeah. Here's one thing that you can do that can have impact hundreds of years from now, is that you begin to create and produce in your family a way of thinking that becomes legacy, that can be passed down and reproduced over and over and over again. And that you pass down a way of thinking to your children, and they pass down a way of thinking to their children, and so on. And this is what a family is called to do, is to produce in the earth and to reproduce who they are, right? And how they live, not to just give money, not to just give an inheritance, but to reproduce a way of thinking. The way that they think and them following God and everything about their life should be a reproduction of what you have done. And not only that, you raise them up in such a way that that child can go on and do the same thing, right? So that it can be in perpetuity, this reproduction cycle.